We have an established strategic Bitcoin reserve. As of yesterday, an executive order was published by the White House, and it creates the strategic reserve that we have been speculating about for quite some time and was promised in one form or another. So let's get into it right now. Stephen, you want to kick us off and give us a rundown on what the executive order included?
Yeah, what a night with this coming out, this being signed. We finally got the SBR executive order, and I thought it was fantastic. To be honest, I thought there was a lot of uncertainty coming into it. There were tweets about Ripple and Cardano and Solana and what is this going to be and are we going to get it? And coming into it, we saw the final product was just that. So it's three things. One, we're holding the Bitcoin that we have. The government is going to maintain and stop selling all of the Bitcoin that it currently has from possession. There's some complexity here because there are the Bitfinex coins and these may have to be returned. It's uncertain. So there may be some complexity there. But the rest of them will stay on the balance sheet for the US. Those will be in the reserve and those will stop being sold. That was the outcome that I think most people expected. That was, unless they really surprised us to the downside by not doing anything, we expected the stockpile. So great that we got that. I think what was notable, though, and what was unexpected and very positive was a couple of other things. One, they very cleanly carved out crypto from Bitcoin. And so far from having a reserve that was part Bitcoin and part XRP and part Cardano, they basically not only put Bitcoin as its own separate thing, but they even said that we're not buying more of any of these crypto coins. We're just not selling them. And actually, we might sell them even. We reserve the right to sell them, but we're putting them into this thing. And one of the things I think people should understand is that we're talking single digit millions for many of these coins. The US has de minimis amounts of some of these coins that were tweeted out, very small amounts. So it's basically nothing. And in doing so, they made some really interesting and clear statements on why Bitcoin is better and why Bitcoin deserves this special status. So we got an amazing carve out. And then the last part of it, which was very exciting, they basically said something like they may consider budget neutral purchases of additional Bitcoin. In the actual text, they said they shall. Now it is come up with or design to create them. So there's still a difference between that and actually doing them. But the Treasury and the Treasury Department and the Secretary of Commerce, Lutnick and Besant, have been instructed with coming up with budget neutral ways to buy more Bitcoin. This is smart for two reasons. One, they don't have to run it by Congress. And two, they can't be criticized for spending taxpayer money in the same way. So that's a high level summary. I'll stop talking here, but they really threaded the needle, I think, on a number of issues to come with an executive order that was very good.
We'll go to you next, Lynn. We'll mention that Besant was on CNBC this morning talking about the reserve with Joe Kernan, and he was very clear several times that it is the intention to buy more Bitcoin. The language he was using was very clearly saying that we have the intention to buy more Bitcoin. We have to figure out how to do it. Same thing in the executive order, I believe, too, with the word "shall." Lynn, what was your reaction to this moment? And if you want, why do you think price action's flat after it?
I think Steven summarized it well. I agree with the points he made. Basically, this is pretty much what price-focused Bitcoiners would hope for: is that Bitcoin is separated from the others, that they're at least going to ring fence the coins they already have. That was at least my kind of lower end base case, is not trying to expect bigger things, and I'd rather be surprised to the upside than the downside. So at least got, it seems like, the minimal start, and then we'll see. There's a couple reasons I think why price action is not very great at the moment. I think one is that the market already anticipated this. It's not really a massive upside compared to what they expected. And to the extent that it could be, because of the open ended nature of trying to find ways to buy more Bitcoin in a budget neutral way, it's very unclear on the timeline or the scale that will end up occurring. And so the market still has questions. And whenever you have questions, you have price uncertainty. And then in addition, when we saw Bitcoin consolidate for 7 months last year, right? So March 2024, it broke out, touched new highs. And there were some kind of on chain indicators you can look at that kind of give you a little bit of a measure of maybe euphoria or just the sheer speed of the move. And for example, I like to look at market cap to realized cap. basically the ratio of market capitalization to like average on-chain cost basis. And when that becomes pretty elevated, sometimes the market needs to digest that because that's in some ways it's like a temporary price. If one house on a block sells and all the houses get repriced, it's like, well, is that really the new liquid price at the street, or maybe does it need more time to actually get there? So I think that Bitcoin had this like 7 month consolidation. Nothing was as euphoric as we see in multi-year tops historically that Bitcoin's had, but it was a little frothy. We worked that out. And I think we saw similar ratios back in November for after the election when it broke out to the first time it was touching 100K. We had similar kind of consolidation since then at around a similar kind of market value to realized value ratio. So it's not that surprising to see that the market needs time. There was a lot of euphoria around MicroStrategy at the time as well, and it was trading at like over 3 times NAV, if I remember correctly. And these things just take a time to digest. I think that's where we are with the market. The way that I generally talk about it is Bitcoin has plenty of its own characteristics to be bullish on, and any kind of large individual nation state buying is a boost, a cherry on top. And it's always better to have just low expectations so that you're more likely to be surprised to the upside than the downside.
I like that approach. I try to apply that in life in general. Ben, what's your take on the SBR and wherever else you want to comment on in this regard?
Yeah, I think Lynn nailed it in terms of the market's reaction to it right now, but I really loved the announcement. And I loved it for a couple of reasons. The first one is they created a really clear delineation between the two categories of assets. And I think that was really important. And there was a lot of uncertainty around how they were going to treat these, whether they were truly going to lump this all together as one crypto strategic reserve, or whether Bitcoin would really start to shine and highlight it as a true reserve asset that can be applied on a national level. And I think that was a really big step for them to take. The second one was I don't think anybody was quite ready for that background section of the executive order where the United States government would be educating the world on the benefits of Bitcoin. But that was one of my favorite parts about this entire executive order was when they went in there and they made that connection to the world about it being digital gold. They highlighted the fixed supply and they highlighted that Bitcoin can be treated as a strategic reserve asset. To me, that was beautiful, because they're signaling this out globally. This isn't all of us Bitcoiners out on X telling everyone why Bitcoin's good. This was the United States government putting it in writing and putting it on the White House website. I think that's a massive step. And it's going to force other countries to take stock in this. They're going to have to pay attention to what we're saying. I know that there's been some disappointment around this coming out as an executive order, because obviously executive orders can be reversed ultimately. But it's really, to me, it's what it signals. Once the cat's out of the bag here and you've gone out and publicly told the world, Bitcoin's the reserve asset. This is the only one that we're locking in a reserve that we are not selling. None of the other ones got that treatment, and that is a massive step for Bitcoin. Where this progresses, we'll have to take some time to see, right? I think they've got 30 days to first go take inventory, which is funny, right? Luckily, now they've got a on-chain verifiable asset. So once they get that in order, they won't ever have to take inventory again, including the language about going out and coming up with budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin is huge. And you're giving the two right
100%.
guys the incentive to go do it, right? And Lutnick and Bassett, you can't ask for two better guys to go out and try to come up with these solutions. So when they say shall, that means they have to do this. They have to come up with the strategies. It doesn't mean they get implemented, obviously. That's going to take some time. But just the fact that they're going to be able to go out and do these assessments is massive. So I was very excited to see that announcement come out. It really raises my confidence in where Bitcoin's going. I think it's going to take the markets some time to digest exactly what this means. But ultimately, I see this as being nothing but positive for the asset.
100%.
Beautiful. Brandon.
Two quick comments here. One, agree. Very happy. Best case scenario. And based on the tweets on Sunday mentioning Cardona, Ripple,
I love that you call it
Solana,
Cardona, by the way. I think that's
Solano, whatever you call that. Based on that, I was not bullish on how this was going to look and when it was going to come out. So I think we dodged a bullet there. And then it brings up two questions in my mind. One, did they just hear all of us screaming Bitcoin, not crypto, separate them, and they just threw us a bone here? Or did they actually do the thinking and came up with the obvious right solution to separate the two? Don't know the answer. Either way, I think what's interesting here is the ability to do creative accounting to keep it budget neutral, in my opinion, sets the pretext for a nation state adoption war. I don't want to overstate that it's tomorrow or next month or maybe ever going to happen. But if it does happen, Trump likes to win. Trump likes to be number one. And so fancy accounting can come out of the woodwork at the last second to make sure we stay ahead in that race. And I like that conditions for Bitcoin's price, of course.
All right, John, we got to hear from you on the big news of the day.
Yeah, no, I think you guys nailed it. So I'll be brief, but yeah, I think just having some perspective on this, putting the initial market price reaction aside, I think having some perspective on this to be a very historic, massive development in Bitcoin's history, no doubt. I think we'll be looking back at March 2025 and saying this was a big deal. And if you just look at some of the hater bear takes out there, some of them are like, "Oh, there's no explicit new buying in this announcement where the US government strategically declared Bitcoin to be an asset they're going to hold for the long term." And they're ignoring the fact that Lutnick Investment were tasked with figuring out how to do budget neutral purchases. When it's like you're admitting that the US government is now holding Bitcoin strategically. And the worst thing you can say is that, oh, in this announcement, they also didn't announce $1 billion purchases. Let's have some perspective here. If that's your critique, then I think you're admitting that this is a pretty big deal.
100%. And in conversations with people in DC, I've talked with a number of people, and I need to be careful exactly on what I say, but suffice it to say, I can verify that the conversation around actually finding these budget neutral purchases is tangible. It is happening. It's not an afterthought. It's not a bone in the executive order. This is a real ongoing drive. So that's obviously like very interesting and part of what could be an upside surprise from this. And then I liked what Ben said, and that was also my take the night that it happened, that I think your most bullish outcome, besides like just the US deciding to plow a huge amount in, would actually be if this kicks off a first follower. I guess we already have UAE, but now that this is out, now that there is an official document from the US government that says, hey, Treasury, hey, Commerce, let's go find ways to get more of this stuff. And it's a strategic asset. It's scarce. David Sachs was on an interview. He gave a great marketing pitch. He was on TV and he said, why do we have the strategic Bitcoin reserve? Because Bitcoin is scarce, it's verifiable, he said all these qualities we've spent years talking about. And that's why the US government has decided it's a reserve asset. So tremendous marketing.
And mentioned right in the executive order too.